Alright, so this is an American alligator. This is a juvenile. His name is Jelly Bean. So we name all of our juvenile alligators after candies. Gives them a little bit more of a sweet appearance. And that's why the big one over there and there, his name's Wonka. Just thought that was appropriate. I'll give you guys kind of a brief overview of everything about alligators. So, like I said, this is an American alligator. There are 2 species of alligator in the world. There's this one, which we can find here in America.
What is he doing to his neck?
So, I'll actually get there. I'll explain what he's doing with his throat there. So the other species of alligator is the Chinese alligator. So these guys have an interesting backstory of why they're so important and known throughout the United States. So in the 1940s and 50s, these guys were hunted to near extinction because hunters liked them for their meat and their skin. Their skin on their undersides and their sides here looked fashionable. People made boots and handbags and other stuff out of them. And yeah, almost eradicated. They are actually one of the first species to be put onto the endangered species list. However, they were also one of the first species to be taken off. Now, generally, when a species is taken off, it's not done by the same people who put them on the endangered species list. But in this case, that's exactly what happened. So, when they were put onto the endangered species list, the people who hunted them didn't want to lose their livelihood because this is what they did for a living. They sold these guys. And so they did something unique that seemed to work really well. So they went out into the wild, and they did this for quite some time. And they found all the nests and all the eggs within the nest that they could find. And they raised them to a point where they could defend themselves naturally in the wild, where they wouldn't really have any more predators, but big enough also that they could get some amount of meat and skin from them. And I think that's usually around 3 or 4 years old. And so at that point, what they did was took 50% of them and kept them. Those 50% would go on, unfortunately, to become meat and other types of things. But the other 50% were released. Now this caused a massive population boom because naturally only about 20% of the eggs would have hatched. 50% of the eggs were now hatching and surviving into adulthood. 20% would have hatched and survived into adulthood. So now 50% were, surviving. So that caused a huge population boom. Their population is now well over 2 million, and they are no longer on the endangered species list. However, with the other species of alligator, this is not the case. There's only about 125 of them left in the wild, so hopefully we can see some changes there before it's too late. We'll find out. So, that's kind of like their backstory, their kind of history, and why they're so well known. So, alligators evolved around 200 million years ago. Well, crocodilian species evolved around 200 million years ago. And they've pretty much stayed relatively the same since. And that's because what's up?
When the alligators get mad, they come up to you and bite you.
Well, they can do that, yes. Yes. Because they want to eat. Their general body shape has worked for that long. So, one thing is they're nice and long, yeah, buddy, and they're full of muscle, and this is because they're swimmers, and we all know that swimmers have great muscle tone. So they swim mainly by one locomotive process called serpentine swimming, and so you can see at the bases of his tail, it's nice and thick. His tail is full of muscle. It's mainly just one super strong muscle that kind of pushes his way. So when he swims into the water, he tucks his legs and his arms up, and he tucks them back on his body. I wonder if I can get him to do it. It's easier with the back legs. And he tucks them up like this, and he just moves that tail back and forth, and it's like a rudder system, and it just propels him through the water. It's strong enough, and they can pretty much leap right out of the water. And you've probably seen videos of that and stuff, especially with the crocodile, like the Nile crocodile. They have to leap out of the water to grab a gazelle or a zebra or something. So they're incredibly strong. But because they're also adapted for the water, they have other cool things that allow them to mainly stay within the water. And that's with their head. So, if you guys can see, on the top of his head, everything that is on his face is oriented in an upward fashion. So one of the first things Alright, buddy, is, if I can get my hand here so he doesn't decide to bite me. Yep, are his nostrils here. So you can see his nostrils, they're opening and closed, and he can actually shut them all the way. I'll come over here, I'll probably open them back up. Yep. So you can see how they're open, and he can actually has full control over the muscles to shut them up completely. So when he's under the water, he doesn't have to take in a bunch of water through his nose. Not only that, but on the inside of his mouth, his tongue, if I can maybe open it up. You open it up? So you can see his tongue. It's nice and wide, and you can see how it's kind of cut the, the back of the throat off. So that's another method of controlling how they can, controlling water. So he cuts that off, so when he opens his mouth into the water, he doesn't get a whole rush of stuff in. And he can actually keep that closed while he is eating. So meat can slide down into his gullet without a bunch of water rushing in. So back to the top of his head. So he's got his eyes oriented on top, so when he pokes his head out, he can see up above, and he can look around without actually putting his whole head out. But his eyes have a unique adaptation, and so you can kind of see, did you see that movement right there? So he's got two sets of eyelids. You can kind of see one right there, and he'll move it. Exactly. So let's see if there it goes, and I'll move it. Should open it up.
So one membrane's kind of for the water?
Yeah, so one does what we do. When we close our eyes, we can't see. And the other is just for that. So it closes, it's see-through, and then acts as a built-in pair of goggles, so that when he's under the water, he can still see, but he doesn't have to get debris and gunk in his eyes, because nobody likes that, really. So, but his ears are also located on the top of his head. And you can kind of see these, some people call them mascara lines or whatever, eyeliner lines behind his eyes here.
Yeah.
Those are his ears. So this way, when he's in the water and he pokes his head up just a little bit like he's looking like a log, he can see, he can breathe, and he can hear everything that's going on around him.
You let go of his neck, he breathe.
He can breathe just fine. I'm not squeezing it hard or anything. So he's kind of doing that hissy noise, so I know that he can breathe just fine. Yeah, buddy. So, continuing on the back, you can see all these nice little bumps here. So all these bumps is a modified bone, and within this bone are a lot of blood vessels. Now on a full-grown alligator, they can provide some protection. They can actually deflect bullets in some cases, but they're used for something much more cool. So essentially, these guys are big solar panels. Inside those bones are a lot of blood vessels, and when he's out sunning, the sun warms the blood within those bones, and that warm blood is then circulated through the rest of his body. That's how he regulates his body temperature. Because unlike us, they can't do that solely on themselves. They have to rely on the sun to do that. You guys can see he's got a bunch of freckles on the underside of his chin there. See all these little black dots everywhere?
Yeah.
So, those are sensory receptors. So, when he's in the water, those can pick up distinct vibrations caused by various things in the water. So
he has sonar.
Pretty much, yeah. So when the water vibrates against those, he can tell what direction something is moving in the water. And they're so finely tuned that he can actually tell the difference between a bug and a raindrop. So yeah, these guys are pretty stealthy, and they can have unique adaptations for that. So on a full-grown alligator, when it's time to lay her eggs, a mom will go out onto the land, and she uses these big claws, big nails, as you can see, to kind of scrape up stuff. Yeah.
Dig a hole.
Yep. So essentially, she builds this big mound, and she digs up the earth and moves leaf litter around, and she builds a mound like this tall, and inside of there, she'll lay her eggs. And this is pretty cool because the composition of the leaf litter and other organic materials can actually serve as some sort of an incubator for the eggs. So the mom will stay nice and close. And the eggs will develop, and soon they'll have little baby alligators on the inside. One of the first things that they do is that they grow one tooth in the front of their mouth, so they can hatch the egg. But before they actually do that, they have to let mom know that they're ready to be hatched, because they don't want to hatch into a giant pile of dirt and sticks and leaves, because that's no fun. So when I first walked up, he was doing a little bit of chirping. So they do that within the egg, and that lets mom, who is right near them in the water, know that they're ready to hatch. So she comes over and digs them out, and then they'll use that tooth and they'll burst through the egg and come out into the world, and they'll immediately go into mom. Some, if they don't have that tooth yet or anything, yeah, buddy?
They put them in the mouth to get clean.
Yeah, so when all of them are out, she'll put them in their mouth and take them to the water. But some of them can't get out on their own. And so the mom will actually use her incredibly strong jaw to actually puncture a tiny little hole into the thing to allow the baby alligator on the inside to come on out. Now, these guys can crush our bones, but yet she's soft enough that she can, puncture an egg without actually killing her young on the inside. And as soon as they're all out, she'll pick them up and she'll take them to the water, because they're more vulnerable on land for other predators and stuff. So the water is the safest place for them. And they'll stick around for quite some time, 3 to 4 years, and they'll continue that chirping. So if a predator is around and mom's not, within sight, they'll chirp, and then mom knows that she has to come around and help them out. And these guys are great mothers. And not only will they help their own young, but if they hear nearby chirping of another young, they'll actually go and investigate and help over there too. They're incredibly nice.